All right, guys, again, this is the review for the linear function test that we'll be taking next Thursday. Number one says write an equation in slope-intercept form that best describes the relationship between x and y shown in the table below. First thing I want you to do is highlight the word slope-intercept form. Because in this case, you're going to have to be real careful. Some of the questions will be asking you for slope-intercept form. Some of the questions will be asking for the standard form. So we got to be real careful on which form we're putting it in. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is, since it's a table, and I want it in slope-intercept form, the easiest way to do this was to go ahead and use our calculator to do a linear regression. So that's what I want you guys to do. Go ahead and go to Stats, and then Edit, Stat, Edit. In L1, we'll put all of the x values. We'll put 1, 2, and 3. In L2, we'll put all the y values, 1, 8, and 27. Once you get them all in, we're going to do that linear regression, stat calc. Number 4, linear regression. And the nice thing is it'll give it to us already in slope-intercept form. They'll give us two numbers. They'll give us the slope and the y-intercept. Let's start with the first number, the slope. What number did you get for the slope? 13. 13 is the slope. Second number is the y-intercept. What was that second number? Negative 14. And there you have it. There is your equation for that table in slope-intercept form. Pretty easy. First one was pretty easy. All right, let's go to the second one. Second one says that Medico has 100 minutes to study his Spanish vocabulary words and his chemistry formulas. He estimates that it's going to take him 3 minutes to go through his Spanish vocabulary words and 6 minutes to practice his chemistry formulas. If X represents the number of times he can practice his Spanish vocabulary words, and Y is the number of times he can practice his chemistry formulas, they want us to write an inequality in standard form. Again, highlight that form, standard form, that we can use to represent this situation. All right, so here we go. First of all, we know he only has 100 minutes to study. We cannot go over that. So let's start there. We have 100 minutes to study all these words, Spanish words and our chemistry formulas. We cannot go over that. So it's got to be less than or equal to 100. The total time has to be less than or equal to 100. Let's start with Spanish. We know for his Spanish vocabulary words, it takes him 3 minutes. So we're going to take 3 minutes and multiply it by how many times he does it? 3x. But that's not the only thing he's studying. He's also studying his chemistry formulas. So we're going to add to that the chemistry formulas. And here it says it takes him 6 minutes to get through those. So 6 times y will give us the time he uses for studying his chemistry formulas. Add those together, and then, like I said, we can't go over the 100 minutes. Is that standard form, though? Is that considered standard form? What is standard form? AX plus BY equals C. Is that the same form? Sure it is. We can stop right there. And that is our inequality for this particular situation. And it is in standard form. Now on the test, I may decide to ask you write it in slope-intercept form, which from there you'd have to go and convert it. So just make sure you're paying attention to what form I'm asking. All right, let's go to number 3. Number 3 here says write an inequality. Write an inequality that has all the order pairs, all the pair of numbers x, y, such that all points x, y lie below line solid. This goes to the order pair 0, 4 and 4, 0. Write the answer in standard form. So we're going to write this thing in standard form. So again, let's highlight standard form. Now here's what I suggest. Since they've given us 2 order pairs, first thing I'm going to do is start with the slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go to my stats, edit, and I'm going to do a linear regression. Let's start there. Stat, edit. In L1, we're going to put the x values. That's going to be the 0 and the 4. 0 and 4. L2 will have the y values. That's the negative 4 and 0. And then we're going to do a linear regression, just like we did on number 1. Again, you're going to get two numbers. You're going to get the slope and the y-intercept. So what are those two numbers? Let's start with the slope. What was the slope? 1. 1x. Don't need to put the 1. It's understood to be there. The y-intercept, the second number, what was that? Minus 4. Minus 4. Now that is not the answer. Remember, they asked us for a standard form. That is not standard form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the x over to the other side. I'm going to subtract it. So now I've got negative x plus y equals negative 4. However, that's still not standard form. There's a problem with that. Remember when we wrote the notes, there was two things that we cannot have in standard form. One of them was we couldn't have fractions, and the other one was we can't have a negative out here in the front. So how do we fix it so there's no negative in front? Yeah, we're going to multiply everything by a negative 1. So if you multiply everything times a negative 1, basically everything over here is going to flip or change signs. So now we got a positive x, negative y equals positive 4. Now, that's still not the answer. Why? Because they asked us to write an inequality. Right now I have an equation. I need an inequality. So, what kind of inequality do I need? Well, first of all, notice it says here, a line that is solid and goes to those points. It's a solid line. So, if it's going to be a solid line, I need an equal sign, but I also need a greater than or less than. All right? So, right over here it says it's going to be below. Below. So, I'm going to need x minus y is greater than or equal to 4. This right here is the inequality symbol. Equal sign gives me my solid line. Now notice here I used the greater than symbol. Why do I use the greater than symbol rather than the less than symbol? Because it does say below. Can anybody spot it? What? Because the y is negative. And what happens when the y is negative when you solve for slope-intercept form? The inequality flips over. All right, so that is the final answer. So a little bit more work on that, a little bit trickier. But again, on the test, I may decide, you know what, I'm going to take it easy on them. I'll give them the slope-intercept form instead of the standard form. So just make sure you're paying attention to those keywords. All right, number 4. Number 4 says the function y equals 6x gives us the total cost y of x paperback books. What is a reasonable domain for this situation? Okay, I'm trying to highlight some keywords here. In this case, that keyword is domain, the x's. We want to know what kind of x's are reasonable for this situation. Well, first of all, the x's represent paperback books. So the question is, if we're talking paperback books, can you go out and buy negative 2 books? No. Can you go out and buy negative 5 books? No. You can't buy negative books. Can you buy 0 books? Yeah. Can you buy 1 book? Yeah. Can you buy 2 books? Yes. All right. So we're going to say that the domain is going to be greater than or equal to 0. We can buy anything greater than 0. There is no such thing as buying negative paperback books. But again, be careful because tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but on Thursday, I may decide to change the word domain to range. I may give you a different equation. May change it completely. All right, but the bottom line is pay attention to the keywords. All right, we're going to do one more, and that's number 5. Number 5 says, graph the representation of all pair of numbers x, y such that 2x minus 3y is greater than or equal to 9. We're going to graph that. Well, before you graph it, you're going to have to take that standard form and convert it into slope-intercept, just like you did on your homework the other night. So the first thing I'm going to do is move the x to the other side. So that gives me negative 2x plus 9. But I'm not done yet. I still got to divide by negative 3. So if I divide everything by negative 3, well, the first thing I got to do is, because I'm dividing by negative 3, I've got to flip my inequality symbol around. So now it's less than or equal to. A negative 2 divided by negative 3 makes this a positive 2 over 3x. A 9 divided by negative 3 is a negative, what? Negative 3. So this is the slope-intercept form. That's what we're going to graph. All right, so let's come over to the graph paper. First thing we're going to do is find negative 3. That's our y-intercept. And I know it's a little hard to tell on yours because the copier didn't do a good job on that. So negative 3 is the y-intercept. The slope is 2/3, which means I need to go up 2 and over 3. Rise 2, run 3. Rise 2, run 3. Remember, you can get more dots over here in the third quadrant by reversing the pattern, going down 2 to the left 3, down 2 to the left 3. More dots you have, the more accurate your graph is going to be. Now, before you connect the dots, make sure you're real careful. Some of these lines are going to be solid. Some of them are going to be dotted. This particular one is going to be a solid line. And the reason it's a solid line is because of the equal underneath the inequality. Last thing I got to do is shade. And it says less than. And anytime it says less than, we shade to the bottom. So this is the graph of y is less than or equal to 2/3 x minus 3. All right, so those are the first 5 questions off of the review for the test next Thursday. We'll look at some more tomorrow.